We are going to start this video off by comparing some of the major differences between Amex and Capital One, and then we will get into the differences of the Gold card and the Savor card. One of the major factors you should consider when choosing a new travel card is the company's transfer partners. Each company like Chase, Amex, Capital One has a list of different transfer partners, also known as travel partners sometimes, such as Delta, Hilton, Air France, that allow you to transfer your points to those companies, to the transfer partners. Sometimes the transfer partners overlap, but sometimes Amex will have transfer partners that Capital One doesn't have, and vice versa. So if we compare Amex and Capital One's list of transfer partners, we will see Amex has 7 transfer partners that Capital One does not have, and they are Aer Lingus, ANA, Cathay Pacific, Delta, Hawaiian Airlines, Iberia, and JetBlue. But Capital One also has 6 transfer partners that Amex does not have, and they are Accor Live Limitless, Choice Hotels, I don't know if it's EVA Air or EVA Air, Finnair, Air Portugal, and Turkish Airlines. If this is your first travel card and you are still fairly new to travel cards, it might be hard to decide which card you should choose based on travel partners. Some people argue it's best to have one card with each company so you can have access to all of the transfer partners, and I do think that's a good idea. It's always nice to have options. However, if you're not able to do that and need to pick one, I recommend choosing the card that gives you access to the travel partners you use the most. For example, I do not care that Hilton and Marriott are not part of Capital One's list of transfer partners, but I do care that Delta and JetBlue are not on there because that's how I redeem my points 99% of the time. However, I do stay at Hilton and Marriott properties, but that's not how I use my points. So sometimes in the example that I just gave you, just because you are a fan of a company or you are loyal to a company, you might not use your points with that company because you have other preferences, which again is something that you really need to consider. And that really works for me because I only use my points really for myself. But let's say you are head of household and you're booking travel for your family, you might decide you get more value from booking hotel stays with your points. And from what I've seen personally, you can book hotel stays at Choice Hotels, which is a transfer partner with Capital One, for sometimes a little bit over 1 cent per point without having to search for specific dates, without having to be super flexible, and it's not as difficult as it is to find a really good redemption for over 1 cent per point with Hilton or Marriott. And Choice Hotels has a lot of decent properties where you can get a night for 16,000 points, which is, you really can't do that with Marriott or Hilton. The next factor we are talking about is the approval process. With Amex, they primarily pull reports from Experian, but that does not mean that they won't ever pull all 3 bureaus. It just means that most of the time, for most people, they only pull reports from Experian. With Capital One, they pull reports from all 3 credit bureaus, which is a major con for a lot of people. Personally, I don't apply for cards all that often, and if you don't apply for cards all that often, it might not bother you as much. For example, I applied for the Capital One Quicksilver card in May, and it didn't really affect my credit score too much. If it did, it wasn't anything that raised any type of concern for me. Even if your score does drop a couple points, it'll go back up in a couple months. Also, Amex cards sometimes may be easier to get approved for compared to Capital One cards. Capital One doesn't want to see any recent inquiries on your report when you apply for one of their cards. They don't want you to already have too many cards, and they pull from all 3 credit bureaus every single time you apply for a new card, where with Amex, they pull your credit report once from Experian usually, and then you are free to apply for as many cards as you want without any more hard inquiries. The next factor you should consider is that with Amex, you have the opportunity to get really nice Amex offers, and you're really not able to do that with Capital One. Capital One does have something called Capital One Offers, but it's more like a Rakuten layout where they have a bunch of different retailers and you're able to earn various amounts of cash back on your purchases with each retailer. With Amex offers, I've been able to get multiple free subscription services, $200 off my hotel stay, a significant amount of points for spending a certain amount of money with an airline, and a whole lot of other really cool offers. That has been a huge part of my satisfaction with my Gold card and something I would miss if I did switch to Capital One. Now we are going to compare the Gold card and the SavorOne card, but I just wanted to make sure we set a general understanding of each company beyond the cards because those factors are important as well. With the Amex Gold card, you earn 4 points per dollar on restaurants and groceries, 3 points per dollar on flights, and 1 point per dollar on everything else. The multipliers on this card are pretty boring and straightforward. You also get a $10 dining credit every month, which can be used at restaurants like the Cheesecake Factory, Shake Shack, Grubhub, and more. You also get $10 a month in Uber Cash, which you can use on Uber Eats as well. With the 2 SavorOne cards that don't have an annual fee, you are earning 3% cash back on dining, entertainment, popular streaming services, and grocery stores. You get 1% cash back on all other purchases, as well as 8% cash back on Capital One entertainment purchases. And then you also get 5% cash back on hotel and rental car purchases booked through Capital One Travel. If you're not familiar, 1% cash back is the equivalent of 1 point per dollar. And unlike Amex, you can use your cash back with Capital One for your travel purchases. So in the Capital One Travel portal, you will have a travel cash balance, which will be your cash back, and you can apply your travel cash to any travel purchases you make in the portal. Or you can use your cash back as a statement credit. With American Express, the cash back is automatically applied for you as a statement credit, and there is nothing you can do about it. I think one of the biggest reasons people dislike the Gold Card is because they can't justify the annual fee and they don't naturally use the $10 dining credit and the $10 Uber cash every single month. What makes the Savor card really special is that you get all the same multipliers and even an extra one with streaming services for $0 a year. So you can earn 3 points per dollar for no annual fee or 4 points per dollar for $250 every single year. And on top of that, if you apply for the SavorOne card for excellent credit, you get 0% APR for 15 months. You can't get 0% interest on any of the Amex travel cards, and 0% interest is a really nice tool to leverage if you use it responsibly. For example, I got my Quicksilver card in May, and then in September, my computer hard drive broke, so I had to buy a whole new computer for $1,300. And instead of pulling the money from my savings account, which was a high yield savings account, I decided to put the purchase on my credit card where I don't have to pay any interest until next September. And then the plan was to pay it off in 3 to 4 months on my own. However, then somebody used my referral link and it brought the balance down by $150. So then I was like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe if I just keep getting referrals, that balance could be brought down even more. And so instead of paying $1,300 for my computer, I might end up paying like $700 or $800 for it. So I'm gonna let that balance sit for a while. So that's my new plan. And I honestly wouldn't recommend you doing this unless you 100% have the cash on hand and that you know you can pay it off, just in case you're not able to pay it off on your own. The SavorOne cards also give you 10% cash back on Uber and Uber Eats purchases, and you also get your Uber One monthly membership fee covered through November 14th, 2024. I feel like the multipliers and extra benefits this card comes with are beyond generous for a card with no annual fee. And so honestly, if you are okay with Capital One's transfer partners, the Savor card might be more valuable than the Gold card. Now, if you do want to apply for the Savor card, I recommend you choose one of the two that are for people with excellent credit if possible. If not, it's not a huge deal, and the version for people with good credit will be just as great. The reason I recommend this is because Capital One has a process called bucketing, which is where they place you in a bucket based on your credit worthiness. So each card on the Capital One website tells you who it is intended for. The 4 different options are for people who are rebuilding credit, people with fair credit, people with good credit, and people with excellent credit. This bucket can determine what your starting credit limit is and how much that limit will increase in the future. This is why you see people with a Capital One Quicksilver card that have had the card for years and have used it as their primary card stuck with a $300 credit limit. They most likely applied for the version of the card that is meant for people with fair credit. Being placed in that bucket means you are a risk to Capital One, and Capital One is not going to be willing to increase your limit. The only way to fix this is to apply for a new card and get yourself into a new bucket. However, some people say Capital One is just stingy and there are just certain people who will never get a credit increase from them. The one con I can think of with the Savor card is that in order to earn the 5% cash back on hotels and rental car purchases, you have to book that through the Capital One travel portal. With Amex, you can earn 3 points per dollar on flights no matter where you book the flight, which is really important. With the Amex Gold card, you don't get any extra points per dollar on hotel purchases unless you book through the Amex travel portal, and then you will earn 2 points per dollar on your hotel purchases. When you are making your decision, it's also really important to understand how you like to book and pay for your travel. For example, 99% of the time, I book my flight with points and then pay for my hotel stays in cash. So the fact that I'm not earning any extra points with the Amex Gold card is a huge con for me. But 5% cash back doesn't really help me either because I would like to book my hotel stays directly with the hotel company. For something like that, I would need the Amex Green card, which might be better than both the Gold card and the Savor card, but that's another video for another day. That is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.